Creepy and Geeky. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, we're continuing our look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Thor. Joining me today is Larry Reid from the Your Move Creep podcast, where he covers action movies from the 80s and 90s. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Thanks very much for having me, Robert. Much appreciated to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. I myself have been on an episode of your podcast.
You have indeed,
talked,
yes.
Commando.
We did. Had a lot of fun with that, I think, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we got to talk Commando, which is one of my favorite action movies. So it was a good time for sure. So,
Absolutely.
But now you're on. We're going to talk some Thor.
Awesome.
This came out in 2010. Directed by Sir Kenneth Branagh, and was it's an interesting movie. It's probably one of my lowest rated movies, but not because it's necessarily bad. I think that generally speaking, all the Marvel movies have been pretty good. For myself, I'm a big Marvel fan, Marvel Comics fan, and so getting to see these movies on the big screen and getting to see this interconnected universe has been very fun for me. But what's your overall feeling of Thor?
I watched it last night. I think it's the first time I'd watched it in quite a long time, probably since it actually came out. Maybe I think I've kind of seen them all really, apart from maybe a couple in the cinema. I think Thor was the only one I didn't really see. So I kind of got to see that kind of on DVD or maybe streaming perhaps. But yeah, watching it again, I was a bit more interested in it than I was when it first came out. I think I thought at the beginning when it was very early on when it first came out, I thought it was quite a boring film. And I think if you look at it, certainly not as boring as its sequel for The Dark World, which is a slog to get through. So thankfully, I didn't pick that one. But I think it's a lot more. I found more things to like in it this time, and I think I sort of knowing the films that have come after it maybe makes it a little bit less of a maybe brightens up a little bit. I think maybe.
Yeah. I get that. I think that this one it has a lot of uphill to introduce. It's got so much going on in it. It's got to introduce Asgard, and rather than being this, rather than leaning into the mythology, they do a lot, but what they do is they try to reconcile the mythic aspects of it and creating also this science, like this much more higher science technology that they have as well. So it's like this weird combo that they're trying to do in this, which I think works overall. They lean into it pretty nicely. It's not bad. But it's there is a lot going on in it, and I think that's kind of what trips you up the first time you watch it. I think definitely rewatching gives you the opportunity to kind of just enjoy it a little bit more because you already kind of know the characters, the setup. So it definitely feels a little bit better after that.
I definitely agree with you. I think it does kind of chuck a lot at you at the one time and expects you to sort of go, okay, this is that. I suppose from maybe me and you that maybe know a bit more of the lore of Thor, maybe know a little bit more about Odin and Asgard and Loki and Thor himself. And though there's the slight change to how I sort of grew up with Thor when it was like Robert Blake, he turned into Thor rather than being Thor straight away, where it was more like that in the 90s.
Right.
Obviously, I kind of was introduced to Thor through like my uncle who read comics for the 60s and 70s, so that's where I get my first sort of views of Thor and
Oh yeah.
Spider-Man, etc. So I kind of know that's what I know Thor as, kind of, is not just for himself being one entity, but being something like a sort of a Shazam character where he's
Yeah,
changing from a
yeah.
kind of sort of man with a walking stick into this kind of a huge sort of beast of a man, basically. But yeah, it kind of asks a lot of the viewer if you don't really know a lot about it, or you don't know, maybe not invested in the stuff as much as maybe when you are. Then it's asking you to know, okay, so there's this God, and there's all these different worlds, and they're all interconnected, and it gives you a lot of stuff exposition to kind of get with. And if you watch it for the first time, you're not really going to enjoy it. You're kind of, is it maybe a bit of an exposition dump sometimes? You're just like
Yeah.
too much information at the one time. But maybe that's why when I went back to watch it after, seeing more Thor movies and seeing maybe him become a bit more lighthearted and a bit more less serious, and then maybe seeing the other movies have been a bit less um, dialogue or exposition heavy. I think they made it a little bit more easy to watch this movie the second time around. Probably wasn't great for the ratings of this one, maybe, but I think it's definitely a better film if you kind of know the stuff beforehand a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think if you know if you're a comic book fan and you kind of already know Thor's history in the comics and stuff, it does make it easier. You get a few little nods here and there, like you said, like
Yeah,
you mentioned with the Donald Blake aspect of it. He had this almost Shazam quality, like you said,
yeah,
where he transformed into a doctor, and then who had this walking stick and then would transform into Thor when needed. So yeah, definitely. I see where they were just like, okay, yeah, we're not dealing with the Donald Blake aspect of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And part of that has to do with, so they were going to have secret identities and stuff in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but when Robert Downey Jr. did the ad lib of Iron Man, and they
yeah,
said, "Okay, you know what? This actually works.
yeah,
This really works for this movie." Kevin Feige actually changed his mind on all of that and just said, "Okay, well, going forward, we're not going to have a ton of secret identities. Most people probably
yeah,
aren't going to have them." So, which made a lot of sense, for
yeah,
the movies at least. So so it made sense in this movie as well to you know he didn't need to be in a Donald Blake esque type of situation because nobody was going to believe he was a god to begin with, especially if he
yes,
didn't
yeah,
have
yeah,
any power like he does. So it's interesting, but it was a nice choice that they made. I think that works really well for the movie series as well.
yeah,
But I will say though, there is some, as much as like we get, we get this one, and this one's mostly serious. And
mm,
then like you said, Thor the Dark World's kind of a slog. Um,
yes,
but then we get to Thor Ragnarok, and Ragnarok definitely ups the comedy level.
mm,
Um, and has a lot more playfulness to it. I would
yes,
say that this first one also does have quite a bit of light comedy. It's not nearly as jokey as Ragnarok is,
no, no, of course,
but it definitely does have some light touches here and there, especially with Thor trying to acclimate himself to Earth, and all the kind of mix of cultures that happens there. um
yeah. It's
it
a real sort of fish out of water story sort of thing, isn't it?
yeah.
Really, it's sort of an alien being coming down to the earth and like having to be sort of integrate himself into society. But I mean, for his all the seriousness of it, and it is played like, I think that's maybe part of the way that's quite fun watching it again, is because you know a bit more now about like the way his personality is. He's sort of loosened up a little bit. So
Yeah.
in that movie, the funness is from him being, like I said, being a fish out of water and being a bit less, a bit of a kind of alien creature that's kind of wandering about these streets and interact with people. There's a great line sort of like, he's asking for a horse and he goes into a pet store.
Yeah.
So we will have dogs and cats. So like, give me one big enough to ride. the guy's just looking at him like, "What the fuck?" So it's good that there's a lot of levity in it, but it does. I don't think it takes itself as seriously as a lot of people kind of give it, kind of put it down
Yeah.
for. I think it's sort of maligned as sort of like a quite a serious, and I think maybe off the back of the films that preceded it, you maybe be a bit less, bit more like, especially Iron Man, it's a bit more like bombastic and um a bit more light-hearted, a little bit more jokey because of the way Rob Downey Jr. is in that film, but
Right.
and because it's led by a Shakespearean actor who's at the kind of directorial helm. But even then, you do sort of sometimes forget that this is not like it's sort of done Shakespearean like it's like a quite like a play in the way that kind of Thor talks and all the kind of
Yeah.
Heimdall and all staff and so forth are all kind of being quite kind of very upper class of English sort of speaking people, but there's still sort of like that good sort of groundedness to it as well. But like I think Natalie Portman and Kat Dennings really bring a good kind of levity to the whole film. I think they
Yeah.
bring it down in sort of a kind of like with Kat Dennings saying when he keeps it called Mjolnir and she's like meow meow like that.
Meow meow. Yeah.
That's really funny. I think that's quite adorable. I think.
Yeah, no, it definitely, I think it strikes a really good balance between
Yeah.
the serious and the comic as well. Yeah, definitely with Kat Dennings
Hmm.
bringing that lighter tone to it. But it's it is interesting to have somebody like Kenneth Branagh
Hmm.
directing this because he is bringing that Shakespearean flair to it that he's known for.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it's a fun way of mixing that, but he's obviously still not he's not taking it fully seriously either,
No,
and
no.
that's what's good about it. I think that the
Yeah.
direction is really well done. That there's this good mix. It's actually a much better film, definitely going back to it. Like, and I know it did well when it first came out. It's
Hmm.
you know this one did well, and it got really good reviews. I think people later on kind of maligned it a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah.
Once like Ragnarok came around, I think people were just like, oh well, this is so much better than the two boring ones.
Yeah.
I was
Definitely.
like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
number one was never boring. Like the first Thor was never boring. It
No.
just
No.
was like maybe not as comic and kind of out there as because I mean it's Earthbound. Most of what we
Hmm.
see in this movie is on Earth. Sometimes we get scenes on Jotunheim and some on Asgard and stuff like that, but they don't really explore those areas as much as
No, they
being
don't
on
really.
Earth and stuff. So it's mostly fish out of water, like you said. This god coming to Earth and having to humble himself. And so it's definitely a fun movie in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could. I mean, it certainly could have been off it with kind of Branagh behind the helm. I sort of could have been a lot different. And I think that it's a credit to him to like go, okay, I've got this serious movie and it's about these kind of mythological beings and this kind of what do you call it, sort of fantasy element, but it's still not as as kind of serious as maybe sort of like Lord of the Rings or something like that. It's very like he knew enough to go right. Well, okay, I can make a series and it's going to be about the serious people, but I can make them a bit stupid and a bit like because Thor is treated like he's not treated as sort of like a higher being. He's sort of like seen as that sort of macho muscle sort of so maybe a little bit of a bimbo sometimes a little bit.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I think he's seen as the kind of like the Kat Dennings and Natalie Portman are kind of fawning over when he comes out with his top off, and it's Chris Hemsworth, so you're gonna see like go look at him go, yeah, that's quite a kind of a bit of an Adonis, I suppose, but yeah, it could have been a lot more serious, a bit less tongue in cheek, but I think it's
right.
sort of played, like you say yourself, it's sort of it straddles that line between like being very serious bits in Asgard and always kind of like treachery, a very
Yeah,
Shakespearean sort of way to get into sort of daftness and like very like um him getting drunk and it's just very funny. I think
right.
that way, but it's
Yeah.
good that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I think you're right. It's just it's a fun movie. It's got the light tone, but like you said,
Mm.
it's got that Shakespearean like the with you know let's get into with Loki.
Yeah.
Loki is, he's jealous of his brother. And then he also finds out through the course of this that he's not, like, he always thought that he was their son as well, that he was Odin
Yes.
and Frigga's son. And that and then come to find out that he's not, that he is a frost giant, child of a frost giant, and
Mm.
that it's that rocks his world, and it changes so much for him, because then he feels like, well, one, they've been lying to me all my life, and two, you know this is, I've always known something was off about me or
Yeah.
whatever. And so, you know so then this is where Loki's machinations start to come around, because he's like, well, you know, I'm going to trick Thor into doing something stupid so he gets banished, and then I can become king. And, because I'm meant to be king, because I was supposed to
Mm.
be king of whatever. And, it's very much Loki. If you
Yes.
know
Yes.
Loki
Very much
from
so.
the comic books, Tom Hiddleston is playing him very well. And
Yeah.
in a way that I actually, Loki's never been a very favorite villain of mine. I've always found him to
Mm.
be grating and annoying in the comic books, but when done well, it's done well. But and this is done really well in here, and a lot of that I attribute to Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah. He's probably the best actor in the Marvel universe, I would say, in terms of giving himself to the character and kind of going full force with it. I think and because he's such a great actor with that as well, he's not just a great actor in this and the other Marvel movies. He's in a lot of good stuff, and um, I think he's this in this film. I noticed especially stood out quite a lot. There's that scene where he was him and Frigga and sorry, him and Odin, and Odin's going into Odin's sleep and stuff, but he's like screaming and shouting and gets so upset and like so um when he's kind of first finding out about him being not
Yeah.
being Asgardian, is obviously not being Odin's real son in the Frost Giant, and I think that's straight away you notice, oh, this guy's a bit different. He's not just being in a film and like sort of being a bit kind of tongue in cheek. He's less like that in this movie. He's more sort of scheming and sort of treacherous and very Shakespearean. He's kind of very much a, a kind of sort of Macbeth sort of character, almost in that sort of way throughout the movie. But yeah, like, and it becomes obviously a lot more jovial and a bit more like you know tongue in cheek and a bit more cheeky scamp through the other movies and obviously
Right.
through the series as well. But in this movie, as he sort of played a bit more serious, a bit more of a darker tone, I think, which is kind of plays well for Loki's sort of character. I think, and I think he's a very. I can see why Kenneth Branagh would probably want him in the film because he does lend to that sort of. I think he's done quite a few Shakespeare things since then. I think, so I think he kind of lends himself very well to that sort of acting and this sort of character as well. I think.
Yeah. No, I think yeah, this one comes off like, yeah, definitely the Loki that we get in like Avengers onward is
Mm.
more playful,
Yes.
um more leans definitely more into the mischief
Oh yes, yes,
aspect
definitely.
of
Yeah.
him. Whereas this one comes off a lot more tragic, and a lot
Mm.
more leans kind of into that Shakespearean tragedy aspect
Oh yes,
of
definitely. Yeah.
of the character. And then it's definitely I enjoy the character more post this one, but I still like
Mm.
him in this one because
Yes.
Tom Hiddleston is just so good at this, and
Mm.
it's just amazing how good of a job he does, and then pulls it into what he does in the later movies, and then into the series, into his own series as well. He
Mm.
fully fleshes out this character, and I love that he's been able to get the chance to do that throughout all of the movies and everything that he's been able
Mm.
to do. So it's
Oh,
good that he's
definitely.
been a recurring character amongst all this.
No, definitely. It's gone on quite a journey, and it's kind of been cool to watch. And I think that's again speaks to how good he is at that character. I think
Right.
he's definitely impressed people and impressed the fans enough to be like keep this guy around. And bring him back because he could. I think when does he dies in Dark World, and then he dies again in like um Infinity War. So
Yeah.
they found a way to bring him back and like have him like he's not just gone just yet. Like there's still more Loki to another trick up his sleeve to kind of come back and stuff, which I think is kind of cool. But and I like the Loki. I love the Loki series. I thought it was really one of the kind of stronger of the Marvel Universe series. So yeah, I want to see him. I want to see more Loki in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy that we're getting a season two of his
Yes,
show and
definitely.
to see where that goes along with the the whole multiverse saga
Yeah,
that we're getting. So it'll definitely be interesting. But yeah, it, what I find funny, there's a little bit funny about this movie is that with Thor himself, Chris Hemsworth, they dyed his eyebrows and his beard and
yes,
everything blonde, and apparently his hair hadn't grown out enough yet, so he's actually wearing a wig throughout this whole movie,
yeah,
which accounts for why the hair looks so terrible. Uh,
yes. It's very lion-esque. It's very like he's like it's strange now. Obviously, you see him. He's obviously had a complete sort of a kind of a change of styles throughout the kind of movies, and
yes,
he's kind of gone back to kind of the sort of more like for like features now in the non-wig version, I suppose. I suppose he's getting along here now, obviously, with it in like Love and Thunder, where he's more of a kind of a sort of Fabio looking man now. But I think yeah, the dyed eyebrows and the dyed beard is sometimes it's very noticeable, and sometimes it's like, oh,
yeah,
it's okay, I can sort of get with it. And then I think when it goes outside, you're like, it's almost as if he's got like he's like as if he's got alopecia or something in his face. He's got like you
yeah,
can't see
yeah.
his
It almost
eyebrows, and
blends
like
in. Yeah,
there's no it's just like just a full face, like eyes and a mouth, and it's quite a stark sight. But thankfully they realised that was the wrong thing to do going forward, and
yeah,
they sort of rectified that as quickly as they could. I think they did it in Avengers. Was he's got the darker eyebrows and like he's got like the longer hair, the more grown out hair there at that point, so it looks a bit more natural.
yeah.
Um, and again in the Avengers they make him a bit more like a bit more toned down a little bit, a bit less serious, I should say, a bit more into kind of making kind of sort of small quips and being a bit more bantery, which I think is kind of
Right.
good. But and this and I like the way he looks. I like the costume. I think that's quite. It's
Yeah.
not going to be comic book accurate, but it's as close as you can to kind of moviness as you can to make it look as good as possible. So I like his look in this movie, apart from again the dyed eyebrows and the dyed beard.
Yeah, yeah. No, I will say that they did a really good job on the costume. It reminds me a lot of there's a costume that he wore in the 80s during Walt Simonson's run, where he had the metal sleeves
Mm.
um and at that time he had a beard. Because Thor
Oh yeah, trying to
traditionally
remember that.
does
Yeah.
not have a beard in the comic books. But he had a beard during that segment of that. So
Mm.
it was an interesting it was definitely an interesting look, and I'm glad they were able to pull that off as
Yeah, I
well as
like
they
it.
did for that. Obviously, it was weird though too, because I mean, like it was weird to have the sleeves, the metal sleeves on him,
Mm.
like almost the chainmail like things in this, because you would have thought they would have been like his arms would have been bare so they could show off his muscles, so it was a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
weird that for the Thor costume that they're covering it up, but it was like, all right, whatever, that works.
Yeah, I
So,
think it
but
works. I think it works. Yeah, yeah. If you're gonna
yeah,
have somebody like as jacked as Chris Hemsworth, you kind of want to like. I suppose you want to show off his body a little bit for the ladies,
yeah,
or for the menses as well. I can imagine, and for the they them's as well. I mean, but I think it's a. I like the costume. I mean, obviously at that time we're kind of you were because Iron Man was so accurate to it. I think as well. I think you wanted a wee bit of accuracy, but I think it's maybe a good blend of some of the kind of proper old stuff with the kind of circles on the sort of the shoulders and the chainmail, or a bit remains of the 80s, maybe the bit the 90s a little bit as well. Um, there's a little bit more of that later on, in Love and Thunder, looks a bit more 90s, a bit more Rob Liefeld, I think, in those kind of days. But yeah, I think they got it pretty spot on. I think it looks pretty cool. I think all the kind of Asgardians look quite interesting. Some of them are a bit like it looks very like fake in that way, sort of like it looks very cosplay some of it. But
Yeah.
I think on the Warriors 3, I think it looks a bit more like Warriors 4, sorry, look a bit more like cosplayish.
Right.
They're I don't think I think they get a little bit of a the lower end of the costuming. Maybe they were done the last bit. They're like, okay, we should get base costumes quickly for the Warriors 4. Let's just do this.
Well, I think that's
But
even funnier too because somebody like the Shield agents even mention it as they're walking through the streets of the town. They're like, "Is
yeah,
there a Ren fair going on around here?" So
yeah, yeah,
it definitely a nice little throwaway dig at their costuming.
yeah.
Their costuming, like it's just definitely they kind of leaned in. Like if you know the outfits from the comic books, they kind
Mm,
of leaned into it a little bit, but not too much. They kind of just updated it for movie because obviously
yeah.
what you see in the comic books is not always going to be able to be pulled off. So
Mm,
I mean I think they did a fairly good job with it. Everybody's costuming came off pretty well. Loki
mm.
with his bendy helmet and
Yeah, it's cool.
everything, and
Yeah.
it's it comes off pretty good. And you see, like, if you tried to pull something off like the comic books we've seen in the Loki TV series,
Mm.
that yeah, that doesn't pull off that
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, no, no, no. It doesn't really translate as well. No, no. And I would be a very sort of 90s look about it. Like
Yeah.
when I was used to watch things like The Flash with John Wesley Shipp or that kind of strange Justice League movie they brought out very early on
Yeah.
in the 90s. It's where it's just just lycra and like sort of like felt
Yeah.
costumes. Yeah, it wouldn't really translate as well as it. And I think you've got to sort of nail that with Loki. The helmet is a pivotal part because the most recognizable part of Loki is that those kind of
Yeah.
big sort of dual horns. So I think it's interpreted quite well in this uh, and a bit more funnily, and obviously the TV series with Richard D. Grant, but which is my
Yeah.
Loki, I would say. But I think that they do him a good service and make him look as cool as he can with like gigantic horns on his head. So I think they
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
for everybody. You get to see sort of the Thor helmet as well, and um, which sort of they can update a little bit later on in the series as well. But yeah, I think like I can agree that they're very modern outfits and they're very like updated, and they're not like kind of shiny spandex basically, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's a like, I know people complained for a while, about the X-Men not having their outfits and stuff. And,
Mm,
as we've gotten along through the comic books, I think the MCU has done a good job at updating and making costumes that have those touchstones to the comic book stuff without being direct
mm,
recreations, just because as we've seen with Loki, as we've seen with Captain America
yeah.
in the first Avenger, he wears a costume that's very similar to the one he would wear in the comic books, and it just
Mm,
doesn't work well. And
no,
so you
no.
have to modify and update in a way that makes sense and that would look good in the real world, but while also having that kind of fantastical look as well. So
Yeah, I've
I think
definitely.
they
Oh, sorry.
no, no, no. What I was going to say was, Thor is really the first movie of the MCU
Mm,
where we're getting that, because Iron Man armor that's going to
yes.
look fairly like what we got. And then we had
Mm,
the Hulk, and it's just a green guy wearing pants. So there's
yes,
no,
yes, yes.
wearing ripped pants. So, it's like, so this is our first opportunity to kind of go, okay, well, so how is this going to look? How is this going to pull off? And I think they overall did pretty well with everything, especially with the stuff like, Odin's look and
Mm,
Heimdall's look. I mean, they had a lot more to go into with costuming with this than,
oh yeah,
I
definitely.
think, especially fantastical costuming. So, and the fact that they pulled it off as well as they did is just fantastic to me.
Yeah, and I think it's very theatrical. It kind of adds to the element of the film as well. And I think
Yeah.
the sort of fantastical kind of fantasy nature of it, and you can sort of play about with that with it, like they did in the movie. They obviously mentioned the Ren Freya
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of again with the kind of Warriors 4 come down, and obviously there's Thor and there's Loki and stuff. But Loki obviously only comes down the earth really looking, kind of suit and a tie kind of thing. Almost kind of look like a Doctor Who sort of look about him. But yeah, it kind of adds to the sort of the maybe not the silliness maybe of it, but maybe it kind of adds to the kind of atmosphere to make it look a bit like there has to be a sort of complete polar opposite to the way they're looking at. They have to look a bit daft to compared to us and on Earth. So they need to make a bit look a bit kind of stupid, not stupid, but certainly strange and sort of unusual looking. So I think they've done it quite well, and I think that it sort of adds to the kind of the overall flavor of the film. It's going to be a lot different than the films I had before, like Iron Man, and like you said yourself, it's their armor. Then you've got like the Hulk just in kind of ripped off pants and kind of like hat, not even a costume, not even like clothes, basically just a
Right.
green man, basically. But yeah, it definitely kind of adds to the whole sort of feeling of this film and like adds to the sort of the comedy of it a little bit as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's you know, uh let's talk about Odin, Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Mhm.
To me that was a huge get.
Oh yes.
Always love that, especially love whenever he gets to do any voiceover narration.
Mm.
That is it's so good. Like, so I'm a big fan of the 1992 Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Oh yes,
and
yes, absolutely yes.
he does that voiceover narration for that movie,
Mm.
and it's so good. And it just reminds me, like, when he does it in this one, when he talks, he's just got such a great voice for that.
Mm. Does
It's
yes. Yeah.
so good. So it was, and just, who else could play Odin but Anthony Hopkins? He's so good in this. It's just, he's just so fantastic. He pulls off, he has just the right amount of gravitas to pull off being, the king of the gods. So
Yeah, I think he's really a really good actor when it comes to films like this because I think he can have gravitas, but he can also accept the way it role he's in. Like in Dracula, he's very kind of mad and madcap and sort of chooses the scenery quite
right.
a lot. Like when he's Van Helsing, he's very like
Yeah.
animated and very like sort of not comedic, but certainly like the sort of the energy of the film at some points when we're all kind of used to Keanu Reeves and his really strange English accent and the sort of tone of the
Right.
film. He sort of brings the tone up quite a little bit and makes it a bit more fun, a bit more kind of madcap. And I think in
Right.
this film, he definitely chooses scenery a little bit more. I think he's quite kind of loving. I think he quite loves playing Odin. He plays it so well. I think he's
Yeah.
just such an amazing actor, and like you say, he does great voiceovers from from this movie to Dracula to The Grinch Stole Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think which is quite a fun one for him to do. But yeah, I think he's an awesome actor. I love him. Like who doesn't love Silence of the Lambs? I mean, he's
Yeah. Yeah.
incredible in that movie. So yeah, when he turns up every so often, I just think it's a massive, like you said yourself, it's a massive get for this movie, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure that Kenneth Branagh sort of pull some strings with him to like, come
Oh,
on,
yeah, I
like
guess he said that he kept him from going into retirement. He was going to retire, and then Kenneth Branagh asked him to be in this, and he said
yeah,
yes. So, credit Branagh for, getting him to work more, and
mm,
and I'm sure he did, several movies besides the Thor movies in between.
mm, mhm,
But
mhm.
yeah, I think that he brings, like you said, with Bram Stoker's Dracula, he brings this manic madcap energy to that role,
Mhm, mhm.
and in this he's a little bit more serious and stuff.
Yes,
But you see in, and I'm going to get into it in another episode, but in Ragnarok he is playing Loki, playing him, and so he can obviously play that silly, funny aspect as well. And that's what I dig about him, is
yeah,
he just seems to genuinely enjoy being an actor, and just whenever he gets a good meaty role, that that's the, and like this one's nice and meaty.
Yeah,
He's not
definitely.
in it a lot, but when he's there, it matters, and it's
Mm.
just so good.
It's very commanding. When he comes, there's that scene obviously the amazing fight uh with the kind of the frost giants, I should say. And when he kind
Yeah.
of comes down in the Bifrost, and it just looks like this amazing sort of like it's very theatrical entrance he kind of makes on his horse. It looks gigantic as well. Like
Yeah.
even though he's meant to be bigger than he's meant to be smaller than the frost giants. He seems to be massive. He just seems to be this giant comes down and like this sort of rainbow bridge. It's amazing. I think he's definitely having fun in this movie, even though he is being is a very serious part of this movie. I kind of the sort of maybe a little bit more the pathos, like we talked about with Loki as well. He's not as kind of um super serious. Sorry, not as sort of jokey this movie as
Right.
in maybe the other ones, but yeah, he's definitely more of a. I think he does kind of generally enjoy these movies. I don't think I've ever heard him kind of come out and say or kind of poo-poo these movies or kind of. I think he just kind of enjoys being, like you said, being an actor and being in roles and having fun on set. And I think he probably did have it, and obviously being with one of his friends as well. Like I'm sure they had great times, kind of working together and like making this movie. Going like, well, look at us, like making this big budget Marvel comic book movie together. Like, who would have thought? Like, I think that's
Yeah.
such an interesting part of it. I think that to know these two kind of big sort of lovies, have tread the boards doing Shakespearean roles and been in maybe big Broadway shows or West End shows, and now they're like making this big high budget blue screen um crazy crazy film, and I just think it's really fun, and I think it's really adds to sort of the interest of it in this movie because they're just making this high concept film that they've never really probably never been part of before, and I think it's just a testament to how good Kenneth Branagh made this film.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, I've never heard Anthony Hopkins say anything bad about these movies. And I mean, obviously it's a testament that he keeps coming back
Mm,
um for all of them that he has. And even what little bit he's worked on all of them, because I mean he's only there for little bits in each one of them.
yeah,
But
definitely.
he obviously enjoys the role enough that he's like, sure, I'll come back,
Yeah, of
especially
course.
with
Yeah, yeah.
three different directors, so
Oh, yeah,
each time
definitely. Yeah.
he's come back and just said, okay, yeah, I'll do it again. So
Yeah, I mean, there must be some sort of enjoyment or something he's getting out of it that kind of fuels him to come back again. Maybe it's just money,
right.
but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's like just here's a shitload of money, Anthony. Just take this. Like, okay, bro. Want me to look it? Want me to pay Odin again? Absolutely, yeah. Like, just I've got my rates have gone a little bit more, darling. I need to if I want to really get myself into the role of Odin again, I have to have 20 million per line.
Right.
I don't really know, but nah, I'm sure he does generally enjoy it. He seems to be that kind of person, really, and not knowing him, seeing him through his kind
Right.
of his like acting career and like the way he is in interviews and the way he is in weird. I don't know if you've ever seen that weird sort of dancing TikTok thing he did or something. It's really strange, but I
Oh
think he just
no.
seems like a generally good person, a generally like fun
Yeah.
person. I think so. Yeah, I'm very pro Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, absolutely. And lastly, I mean, we can talk about well, not lastly, but and we can go on to talk about Natalie Portman as Jane
Mm,
Foster.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so Natalie Portman is one of those actresses that I like. I've liked her since she did like Leon the Professional,
Oh yes.
and she's just one of those actresses that's grown and gotten better. It's interesting because sometimes she comes off as feeling like she's like too big for this kind of stuff, but she always
Mm,
comes back. And she seems to like genre stuff like Star Wars and
mm,
Marvel,
mhm. Yeah.
because she and just in general she did V for Vendetta. So
Mm-hmm.
she's been involved in all this like kind of geek media, and so she must have an affinity for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think overall, I like her as Jane Foster. I've never had the problem that a lot of people have had with her in the role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that maybe with Thor: The Dark World it's a little bit iffier, but in this movie she again they changed her character. In the comic book she starts out a nurse, as a nurse, who then becomes a
Mm-hmm.
doctor later on down the
Yes.
road, but a medical doctor, and doesn't have anything to do with like you trying to find portals and stuff like she is in this one.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's an interesting change that I like a lot, because it gives her character a lot more. Like I said, in the comic book she was a nurse who became a doctor, but in the beginning she was more, because it was the 60s and everything, she
Mm-hmm.
was just more um of Thor's love interest, and
Yes.
so
Yes.
it
Yes.
wasn't meant to be anything bigger than that. Over the years, yes, she became a much bigger, better character and
Mm-hmm.
everything. But I think starting her off that way, starting her off as a strong character on her own, um, it was definitely a better idea. And she holds her own with them in many of the scenes. Um, and is leading the human pack, with her and Eric Selvig and Darcy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
She's the leader of the whole thing, and so it's a fun dynamic, not only between her and Thor, but also with her and Selvig and Darcy. They make a fun little group. Of people trying to figure out who this person is that's landed on their, like, that they've hit with their truck twice. And um so it's just definitely a fun character for her. That I was It was interesting. Like, I understand why she wasn't in Ragnarok, because
Mm.
Thor wasn't, it wasn't, how would you get her there?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was fine to have her a part of it, but it was good to see her back for Love and Thunder,
Oh,
despite whatever
definitely.
issues people have with that movie. I enjoyed it.
Mm.
And it was nice to see her in that role that she later inhabits in the comic books as well,
Mhm.
as
Definitely.
a
Yeah.
version of Thor. So and I felt like it was true to her character in the movies as well. So, which starts here. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Natalie Portman. Obviously, I love the. I'm not saying I'm going to say not love, but I enjoy her in the prequels. I think she is a good part again of those films, a memorable part of those films. For good or bad, that she is in these film in the Star Wars prequel trilogy. Um, Again, like yourself, I liked her when she was in Leon. I thought she was amazing in that movie. For a child actor that to
Yeah.
kind of show that sort of level of acting and be as good as she was in that movie. And obviously in a movie that you're starting along like you're starting like Gary Oldman. I mean, you're like Dracula himself. That you
Yeah.
sort of you're playing against him, or you're playing against Jean Reno, which again, an amazing French actor. I think she done so well, and in this movie, I think about this myself, that the kind of sort of the good strength about Marvel movies on the whole is that they can bring these big people in. These people are not thought of as, like you said yourself, that maybe they're sort of slumming it a little bit when they come into these movies. And I think that's the scene is that way. But I don't think there's really anybody that's big that's done that, like Christian Bale or Natalie Portman. Have really went and went, these films are shit. I don't know why I was in them. Like, they're horrible. Like, she'd never come out and said anything about Star Wars. She never said anything really about this movie. Not that I'm aware of. Maybe she has, and I've never come across it. But
Right.
I think that that sort of that kind of plays to testament. It makes me like her more. Makes me like the people that do that more, because they are willing to go. Okay, I'm in these serious dramas. I'm in Black Swan, for instance. I'm in
Right.
these kind of serious movies, but I can come down and I can be in these movies that they're not elevated, and like using that horrible bunny ears quotations, but they are fun. They're fun to, I imagine, fun to film and fun on set, and you get to sort of play something a little bit different than you normally would, and it's not as harrowing as maybe like something like the Black Swan.
Yeah.
Um, it's a bit less of a taxing role to go into, but I think she still is great in this movie. I think that she maybe some. I think a lot of people have been a little bit critical of the fact she's a bit doe-eyed in this movie a little bit. She sort of still plays a little bit of the love interest, but she still
Right.
has a little bit more. I think watching it last night again for the second time, I kind of appreciated her a little bit more in this movie. A little bit more, found her a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interesting, a little bit. Not that I found her horrible in the times I watched it before, but I think she plays off Chris Hemsworth a lot better in this movie than Liam Hemsworth. Jesus Christ, watching The Witcher too much, or reading The Witcher spoilers too much, I should say. But I think her and Chris have a really good relationship, and I think, like you said yourself, I think not having a Ragnarok maybe it wasn't really missed in that film because it's too
Right.
wacky and there's no sort of way to get her to sort of shoehorn her in. But I was really glad when she came back, and um, fuck the haters that were saying that she was going to be announced as Lady Four, or the Mighty Four as she now is in the
Right.
comic books. I was like, hell yeah, that's amazing. But bring it on.
Yeah.
I'm well happy to see Natalie Portman back as Mighty Four. That's amazing. And like as no as somebody's seen that arc in the comic books, to see that on the screen was an amazing thing, and to give it
Oh, absolutely.
that sad sort of ending to it was just
Yeah.
because it's tragic. That is the tragedy of the comic, because she doesn't go on to be like super amazing at it. And and then obviously spoilers for Love and Thunder, but she passed away at the end, and it's this kind of beautiful scene, and I think it was just cool to see them two, Chris and Natalie, be back again and be in the film together and sort of play off and the sort of this kind of weird rivalry together each other. I think
Right.
was I think it's a lot of fun. So they're definitely good with each other, and again, as I say, I really like Natalie Portman as an actress. I've loved her in a lot of films, so yeah, and like I'm sad that she won't get to see it again. I don't think we'll really see much of Thor, really anyway. Again, I'm not too sure, but
Yeah.
um, I think it's kind of cool that she got to do these movies and had a blast doing them, and I think that she just is a good sport for doing it. I think
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
I think that's it's the same with Anthony Hopkins. Like again, like just coming down to do something that's maybe a bit different and a bit more um not lowbrow, because that would be I love that Marvel movie, so I'd be putting them down. I think more
Yeah.
just a little bit more broad, maybe is the best word to
Right.
use. Like, but I'm all for a broad movie. I mean, I love the Fast and the Furious, so
Oh yeah.
I have no qualms about liking, and no guilty pleasures in my life. I love everything. Everything is just a pleasure, no guilt in it, guilt associated at all.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the Fast and the Furious movies myself.
Mm.
I think that, and, as long as it's something you enjoy, that
Yeah,
it
definitely. Yeah.
shouldn't be. It's definitely not a guilty pleasure. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. If you like
Mm.
it, you like it, and if you don't, you
Correct.
don't.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think she she's definitely a good addition to the franchise and to the series itself. And getting to see her kind of complete an arc with Love and Thunder was very nice. Very sad, but very nice.
Yeah, definitely.
It's and hopefully we'll get to see more of Chris Hemsworth as Thor.
Yeah.
He seems to really enjoy the character. And hopefully they'll get another movie, or at least have him pop up and some stuff here and there, even if he doesn't get his own movies. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like Iron
definitely.
Man. Iron Man never got another movie after Iron Man 3, but he was all over everything
No,
else
definitely. Yeah,
after
exactly. Yeah,
after
yeah,
that
yeah.
point.
True.
So Thor could always be the elder statesman of the MCU now that that Robert Downey Jr.'s done and Chris Evans is
Yeah,
done. So it'd be
yeah,
nice
definitely. I think
to
so.
nice to see Thor kind of hang around a bit and see where he goes from there. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
at the end of Guardians Volume 3, we get it said Star Lord will return. So maybe we'll get a little Star Lord and Thor team up again.
yeah. I'd like that. I'd be quite fun. Quite a fun. I'd definitely watch
That'd be
that. It'd be a
fun.
fun movie.
Oh yeah, fun buddy movie, like a buddy
Yeah, yeah,
comedy, like that would be so
yeah.
fun.
a sort of space buddy cop movie would be pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
really that, yeah,
That would be great. All right. Do you have anything else you wanted to mention about this movie that we haven't talked about yet?
No, again, I think that we've sort of covered it all. I think that it's just a great movie, like with which I have a new appreciation for. I think that having to kind of watching it through this for this podcast, I think it sort of given me a new appreciation of it. And I can
Good.
look and I go back and go, do you know what? The like a lot. I think I'm maybe bowed to peer pressure when it comes to like my feelings about this movie. I think I've let people sort of decide that no, I don't like this movie. When I watched it last night, well, I do actually like this movie. It's fun. It's daft, but it's very like I think I like the daftness of it. I think I like the silliness
Right.
of it. Like it makes me enjoy the film even more now. And yeah, like if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I think it's fun, and that's what the Marvel movies are. They're just fun, and they're just something you can watch and just enjoy and engross yourself in, and um, maybe not have to think, life's lessons, but you certainly go, "Wow, there's Spider Man!" Like, and I'm getting. I've always said this before, and like, and more and I sort of lean towards Star Wars, but um, we're very lucky to be where we are right now. Like, I don't know how old you are compared to me. I'm 41 now, but we didn't really get a lot of like superhero movies when in the 80s and 90s. Was every so often we got the Incredible Hulk TV show, and we got Batman, the Keaton Batman, and Batman Forever and so forth. But we didn't really get these guys, these kind of the big guys, really the Spider-Mans, until sort of the Tobey Maguire ones. So we're living in a world that's we're very lucky. We're very blessed as geeks, um,
Yes.
that we get to
Definitely.
see these kind of things and get to see them on the big screen and get to see Thor and Iron Man and Captain America and Venom, and uh, we're so lucky. So every time I hear somebody poo-pooing these movies, I go, listen, like we should be lucky, count ourselves lucky. Like, okay, there's like a dance number in Love and Thunder, or there's too much comedy in Ragnarok, or there's like uh, there's like too much. You don't like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier or something, but God's sake, like, or there's too many women in it for some bizarre bloody reason that some
Yeah.
people have this hang-ups about that. There's too many women in movies. I'm like, what? Like, there's women been in movies since movies began, sweetheart. So calm down.
Right.
But we should be so lucky, and as geeks and as nerds, and as an elder geek and nerd, I would say that we should be very thankful we get to see movies like this and sort of appreciate them. They're not going to be 100% all the time. They're not going to be
Yeah.
Oscar winners for acting, but they're fun, and they're good movies, and I love them to death. I think all of them are good. Even for Dark Road, I would accept as being a decent enough a good try at a movie and a good try at a Marvel movie. It's not the best, no, but
Right.
it's and see Eternals again. I didn't really wasn't a fan of that, but I get what we get from it. I take things
Right.
from it that I appreciate from it. I can always take something away from the film and enjoy it. And I think I took a lot more from this film now, watching it again for the second time. I want to watch it again because if somebody wanted to watch it again, my girlfriend wanted to watch it, for instance, I'd go, yeah, cool, go for it. It's like it's a fun movie, and I can sort of sit back and not get hung up about it. I think in the future.
Yeah, definitely. No, and that's a great sentiment to go ahead and end this episode on. So why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, so as you said at the beginning of the episode, I host a podcast called Your Move Creep. I talk about movies from the 80s and the 90s, from year 1980 to the year 2000. I had Robert on before. Talked about Commandos. We talked about earlier on the podcast. Talked about Police Story. Talked about Demolition Man. Previous episodes. I've got talking about Speed soon. I'm talking about your episode with Commando comes out soon as well.
Cool.
So yeah, you can find me at Your MC Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. You can email my show if you want to discuss the show, I suppose, on Your Move Creep Podcast at gmail.com. I'm Your Move Larry on Twitter. Um, yeah, like go and listen to the show, give us a review in iTunes if you liked my ramblings on this podcast, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely go check out the podcast, and yeah, I will be on soon. So
Yeah.
that's good to hear. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks very much for having me, Robert. It's been awesome.
Thanks again to Larry for joining me. On next week's episodes, my son Harrison joins me on Monday to talk some cosmic horror with the movies Glorious and Revealer. And on Friday, Hugh McStay joins me to talk about Captain America, the First Avenger. Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast composed by Jerry Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the Ko-fi page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.